he works with another friend of ours, Emmanuel Sarias, who is Sirius. He is one of the co-founders of Dancing.
He is the founder of Dancing.
Is he the co-founder?
Yes, he is.
Got it. He is the co-founder, and he was going to be with us today, but couldn't make it, and so he was here instead, and I'm delighted to have him here. And Amy has also brought some kits for sale, which is great. And I am going to let her do her own intro and introduce herself because she works for a whole bunch of different organizations. I'm just delighted to have you here.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Annie, for having me here today. I originally planned to come here just as a representative of the Electronic Music Alliance, an organization that I am part of. That we work with people in the music industry, in the electronic dance music industry, to improve the public image of the electronic dance music scene, the rave scene, the festival scene, because there's a lot of bad public image about festival goers and ravers, especially. The underground rave scene has a pretty bad reputation. And we also work to keep, to try and greenify the festival and dance community. We also do community projects like e-waste drives and beach cleanups to, again, help improve the public's public image of the scene. In 2013, I founded my own organization because I was absolutely distraught about all the deaths that I saw coming from the festival and rave scene. People were taking substances that they really didn't know what they were taking because they didn't know about reagent testing, and they also didn't know how to care for themselves when they took substances. And I just believe that nobody should die trying to have a good time. So I formed my own harm reduction organization to help educate users, initially just within my own immediate rave family. And then somehow it kind of grew into something a little bigger than just myself. So I do, besides drug education and field testing, I have a team of Clerk Patrol volunteers that patrol venues looking for anyone having a hard time. I do a little bit of psychedelic care too. If someone's having a hard time, I'm kind of doing the Incendo thing as well. And I do a little bit of underground needle exchange and Narcan distribution for IV drug users and their families, because nobody should die trying to have a good time. So today I'm here in place of Emmanuel Sarias, the founder of Dance Safe and the producer of MDMA the movie. That's the working title, and it should be out sometime in 2018. It's going to be a great revolutionary movie that covers not only the recreational use of MDMA, but also the therapeutic use of MDMA, where they're currently using it to really literally save people's lives. They're curing people of debilitating treatment-resistant cases of PTSD. And just in 2 or 3 treatments, these people no longer meet the criteria. 83% of participants no longer meet the criteria to be diagnosed with PTSD. So it's a really powerful, amazing substance. And of course, it's covering the damages done to create the most adulterated drug market in the history of the world, the ecstasy market, or the MDMA market, Molly market, and the harm reduction approaches. So I want you guys to keep an eye out for that movie coming out next year. And everybody can get a free Clerk Patrol sticker on their way out, stick it on your laptop or car. Anyway, who knows what a reagent is? Okay, a reagent is a chemical or a mixture of chemicals that, when combined and then added to a particular substance, will change color. And it's very specific in what colors it will change based on what substance it comes in contact with. And so when you put a small drop on a sample of a substance, it will change its specific color. And then DanceSafe has a chart. These are DanceSafe test kits that the manual started making back in 1998, I believe it was, when he founded DanceSafe. He modeled it after the Norwegian government's actions of setting up a testing booth at Raves. So he was the first organization in the United States, the second in the world to ever produce reagents for recreational and illicit substances. So when it changes color, according to whatever substance it might be, we have a chart that lists the colors and the substances that it would become. It's a pretty simple process, and I'm going to glove up and actually, Katie, can you grab the little plastic container that's in my purse in the front pouch? I brought something to test, and well, I just wonder what it is until then. So it's important to use gloves. I'm using two particular reagents today because we're going to test something that's being represented as Molly. And we really don't know what's in it. I don't know if have any of you guys seen the short movie What's in My Baggie? Yeah, it's pretty wild that that was made by what's the company? Huh? No, Vice didn't. Did Vice make it? But it was modeled after the efforts of the company that makes and sells drug checking kits, and they go to festivals and they test for people for free, and they sell kits. And their primary goal is to sell kits and make money. Whereas organizations like DanceSafe and mine are more geared towards helping people and saving lives directly. More than 60% of Molly or ecstasy contains absolutely no MDMA. Who knows what MDMA is? Methylene methamphetamine. That's the one. So I'm here to, they asked me to come, and certainly I'm not as good a presenter or public speaker as Emmanuel is. He's an amazing public speaker. He could stand here and talk to you for 2 hours about reagent testing and drugs and how they work. He's one of the most brilliant men I've ever met. I'm fortunate enough to call him my best friend. And I moved up to near where he lives a couple of years ago just to kind of be around him because he's really my harm reduction hero and my best friend. So I love the guy to death. Today I have a couple substances, and if you guys want to gather around, I really could have used Ethan's mortar and pestle. Sorry? He didn't leave a straw. But I have these substances here that were represented as Molly or MDMA. So I've got a testing dish here. All reagent testing should be done on some type of porcelain or ceramic plate or glass plate because you don't want any, certainly on paper it can go through, and we're using corrosive substances that could be very dangerous to the touch and certainly nobody wants to ingest it or get it in their eyes. So wearing gloves is really important because if you get it on your skin, you want to wash it off right away. And also just a disclaimer from DanceSafe and from anybody that uses and sells and distributes drug checking kits is that there's no safe drug use. There's inherent risks in the use of almost every illicit substance because we don't know exactly what's in it. And furthermore, even if we determine that a substance contains a particular substance, that we can't be sure that it doesn't contain other substances as well. And I'll explain that as I demonstrate. Now I've got two separate samples. One is, I have two samples here, and I have two samples here. Because I'm going to be using one of 7 or 8 different reagents that we have. One is called a marquee, and it's one of the basic reagents used to detect things in the MD family. So MDMA, methamphetamine, MDE, and MDA. Now they all have the same reaction with the marquee reagent. So we use more than one reagent when we're testing the substance properties. For MDMA, the only two that you really need is the marquee reagent and the Simons. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the marquee reagent. So we want a very small sample, which I have in each depression in this porcelain testing plate. And of course, you don't want to make contact with the bottle and the substance because you can contaminate your substance. So we want to make sure there's a sizable gap between your sample and the bottle. So this is, I don't know exactly how much is in this, but it's only a small amount. And one of these bottles you can get 50 to 100 tests out of this bottle. So it's a wise investment. They charge $20, DanSafe does, for this marquee reagent. They charge $20 for each one. And then they also have a package deal with the 4 most useful and most widely used reagents. And they offer that for $65. So, I do have those available for you guys if you're interested in taking one with you. Honestly, they don't last forever, so it's a good idea that because they're very sensitive to light and temperature, it's a good idea to keep them in a dark place and away from heat. So they're back to your refrigerator, or maybe in the crisper drawer is a very good place to keep it. So I'm going to apply the marquee reagent to one of our samples here. And all I need to do is put 1 drop on a teeny sample, and then we're going to watch. Now, if this substance was MDMA, you see on the chart here, it would go from white to purple and then to a black. And what I'm finding here is this thing that we thought was Molly is actually turning yellow. Now, the yellow reagent could be either methylone or ethylone or butylone or MDPV because it's turning yellow and not purple. So we wanted ecstasy, we wanted Molly or MDMA. Things are sold every day as Molly that contain absolutely no MDMA. And what I found here by this reagent test is that this contains no MDMA. And people are taking this substance. So I'll just divulge it. This is methylone. And we can confirm that with the test here. Methylone is a cathinone, and many of the cathinones respond the same way and turn yellow. It looks like it's having a very late, small reaction and getting a little bit dark. So I wonder if there might be a little bit of MDMA in it as well. But it's really hard to tell exactly what's in it. But all I can tell you right now is that, when you're testing for something to desire and looking for, if you don't have that strong reaction to the one according to the chart, the color chart, that you definitely don't have that substance. So if you don't have that substance and you can't positively identify exactly what it is, the benefit of testing is that you don't take this substance. And the fortunate thing is that in most cases, people will discard the unknown substances because nobody wants to die trying at the time. So now we know that this contains no MDMA whatsoever. And now let's try the other sample I have. I have 2 dishes with very small samples. And I'm going to apply the methylone. Again, 1 drop of methylone on this one, and hopefully, maybe we'll have a purple to black. It's really cool if you have good MDMA and it's MDMA. It's really cool. It changes quickly and sizzles a little bit and lets off puff of smoke. So you don't want to probably be hovering over your reagent plate as you're doing it. You want to keep some distance between, you know, your reagents and your face and from over the testing plate, because we don't want to inhale or, you know, get it in our eye or anything like that, because that could, you know, that could really suck. So I'm going to put a
So
drop.
you don't actually get high.
Yeah, because, you know, and I doubt that the fumes from the reagent testing will get you high, so don't try to, yeah, don't try to smoke it. Yeah. So I'm going to put one drop on this substance, and here we go. Okay, it's clear, sizzle, sizzle. It looks purple, right? It's purple. And now it's sizzling, sizzling, and that purple is quickly changing to black. So that's a really good indication that right now we're looking at something in the MD family, because the only things that change from purple to black with marquee reagent are the members of the MD family. So we know now that this is either MDMA, MDE, or MDA. And everybody wants MDMA. They don't want, or some people like MDA because you get eye wiggles a little bit stronger. MDMA does metabolize in your system, some of it. I think it's about 35 to 55% of MDMA metabolizes in your body to MDA. So if you're looking for an MDA experience, take some MDMA, because you'll get an MDMA experience and an MDA experience all in one, which is, you know, which is cool. So now I'm going to use a Simon reagent. Simon is really cool, and it will narrow it down. And you know, these charts cover every one of these reagents, and it's really amazing how many different substances we can test with the reagents. It's a long list here, and the list actually goes on. So we can test lots of different substances. But if this substance is MDMA with a Simon reagent, it should turn Simon's blue. And Simon's blue is a really beautiful color. This reagent actually comes in two separate bottles. One is Simon A and the other is Simon B. They can't be pre-mixed because they'll degrade so fast that it'll be useless in almost no time at all. So the first thing I'm going to do, again, maintaining a good distance between the plate and the reagent because I don't want to contaminate it, is add a drop of Simon A, and nothing's happened because it hasn't had the Simon B on. And now I'm going to add a drop of Simon B and add that to solution. And wow, look at that gorgeous Simon blue. Isn't that a gorgeous color? I love Simon blue. It's one of my favorite blues. Yeah. So what we have here is conclusive evidence that the substance that was represented as Molly is in fact what they call Molly. It's MDMA. Now here's the downside of this. And it's really important that you guys understand this because even with reagent testing, there's no guarantee that this substance isn't adulterated in some other way. Let's say there's a substance that would normally turn, let's say 2CI or 2CB is mixed into this, and people are mixing substances, you know, without any, you know, pre-thought or just thinking, hey, let's give them a better experience, or let's add some drugs that'll also get them high, and then we can add just a little bit of MDMA. And that's the problem with, you know, who's heard of PMA or PMMA? These are substances that, you know, because of prohibition. Who likes prohibition? Nobody likes prohibition. Because of prohibition, the precursor chemicals necessary to make MDMA, and MDMA is really the substance that I deal with most in the rave community because everybody wants that ecstasy when they're dancing to rave music. The precursor chemicals needed to make MDMA are illegal and difficult to get and highly regulated, which means that laboratories that in the past were set up to make MDMA and to make ecstasy pills, they're all set up for it, and now all of a sudden they can't get the precursor chemicals that they need to make MDMA, so they're going to start making similar substances that some people call research chemicals. And methylone, cathinones were one of the most widely known about cathinones on the market, for quite some time now. So I think methylone's moved beyond the realm of research chemicals because people actually enjoy taking methylone. I wouldn't say it's more dangerous on its own inherently than MDMA is. MDMA is, frankly, a relatively safe substance if you know proper dosage and you know how to care for yourself when you're on it. But if you're taking methylone in a method that you would be taking MDMA, then you're going to be dosing yourself improperly and you won't know how to care for yourself while you're on it, and vice versa. The problem with methylone on the market, on the Molly market, is that a lot of people, methylone has really flooded the market, and more than 60% of Molly tested on, in the harm reduction organizations that tested festivals and waves, 60% of this Molly is not MDMA, and a lot of it is methylone. Methylone works differently in your body in that it's a good strong high that's similar to MDMA, but it comes down. It has a lot of your come down is fast in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's done, but the physical effects on your body remain, which are it affects your body's thermal regulation, so that your body doesn't have the same capability it normally would have to cool back down. And so the psychoactive effects wear off, but the physical effects are still there. So people are redosing. And when they do that, they're increasing the physical effects, trying to chase that psychoactive effect that they've been looking for. So people think, oh, my Molly's weak, and they just keep redosing it. And that's when you can get in trouble. If you know that you have methylone, you know that instead of taking 90 milligrams like you would, or 100 milligrams of MDMA, because methylone doesn't have that strong empathetic type effect as MDMA does. But where was I? Yeah, right.
So if you know that you have.
Yeah, if you know you have methylone, you might want to take 150 milligrams and then take maybe one more dose later on, or small bumps. They end up doing small bumps through the night, and it can really cause problems to not know what the substance is, even though inherently it's not as dangerous. It's not any more dangerous or less dangerous than MDMA.
Where do you find information about, like good information about like what you're talking about, methylone versus MDMA, what that should feel like when it comes down?
Okay, DanceSafe has really good information about substances on our website, but the most complete and reaching, most far-reaching online source of information about drugs is Erowid. Erowid.org, is it? .org or .com? But it's called Erowid, EROIWID. Yeah, Erowid is the most comprehensive source for drug information in the world. So it's a great reference. It's a great site to use. And
The founders of Erowid did our initial workshop last year.
oh, did they? Really? Fantastic.
And they did the initial weighing and measuring, and also the radiation testing.
Oh, they did. Great.
And we have it on tape, and they're going to release it later this year.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, they were really great. So thanks for the shout out. It's a great source of information.
It really is, yeah.
And also just real quick,
Yes.
So like the DanceSafe guide is amazing and it's super easy to use, but it doesn't in a lot of cases cover like the new weird drugs coming out.
Right.
So if you have like purchases and you want to verify, ecstasy data actually does like GCMS testing, chemical testing of sample people send in, and for every sample they also do the DanceSafe suite of reagents. So if somebody tests to be some new weird pure substance, like biochemical testing, they also have these, so you can cross-reference.
Right,
It's not on here, never fear, there are other resources.
yes. ExtasyData.org is also founded by Emmanuel Surios, the founder of DanceSafe. He contacted the DEA, just a couple of years into founding DanceSafe, and said, hey, I have all these samples of drugs new drugs that are on the market that I think you guys would be interested in knowing about, because you guys, you're the DEA, you want to know about all new drugs on the market. And I'm sure you would like to have a comprehensive, information about that. How about we work something out where people can send in samples anonymously with just a number, like H621, and you test it, you run it through, a chromatography or mass spectrometry testing, and then you post that on your website, and I'll build a website for you, and they agreed, and that's how ExtasyData.org was founded, which is really fascinating.
What's the name of it?
ExtasyData.org. Yeah, and for $100, you can send in a sample. Give them a couple of weeks. So if you want to have an experience at a festival, 3 months from now, and you can have enough forethought to acquire, hopefully a sample, acquire your substances, a month or two beforehand, you can send a sample in and know exactly what's in it. Because the drawback of reagent testing is that if this sample that tested positive for MDMA contained also methylone, maybe a lot of methylone, maybe mostly methylone, maybe 90% methylone, some clandestine laboratories that make these substances will add just a little bit of MDMA in it. They're getting slick on us now. A little bit of MDMA, just enough to trick the reagent. Because the MDMA, the marketing reagent for the MDMA turns from purple to black. Now, if there's also methylone in it, which turns yellow, what color are you going to see? The darkest reagent color is the one that's going to be visible and the one that you can tell. So I happen to know that's 100%. But the layperson that buys some at a festival and goes to the testing booth and says, here, can you test this for me? And we drop our marquee reagent on it. Ooh, purple to black. This contains MDMA. And that's what we're going to say. We're not going to say, oh, that's a good pill. We never say those are good drugs. Although drugs are good. But we're not going to say that this particular substance is good, because all we can tell you is that it contains an amount of MDMA. I can't tell you how much MDMA, and I can't tell you how much of any other substance might be mixed into this with MDMA. So the disclaimer that DanceSafe always has is that all drug use has inherent risk, and no reagent testing is 100% conclusive. So the whole notion of harm reduction or risk reduction is to reduce the chances of harming yourself, and this is a pretty good way of minimizing risk when testing. It's better than popping a pill in your mouth and not knowing anything about it, because that's the most cases of how people die at festivals is because of that. PMA or PMMA. PMA showed up a few years ago in Canada. PMA is a pretty strong drug. It has very strong psychoactive features about it. Thank you. And some people might like the high. I don't know many people that do, but there's lots of psychonauts out there. But PMA takes 2 hours for the come up. And if you're at a festival and someone sells you something they call Molly, and it turns out to be PMA, and you take your dose and you expect to get high, and an hour and a half later there's no come up from what you think is MDMA, then sometimes people will redose. And there is the inherent danger of PMA, because 2 doses of PMA is enough to kill somebody. But 1 dose is enough to give you a decent MDMA-like experience, but it causes, it really messes up your body's thermoregulation. Yes.
Some of the deaths that have happened at Raves, with what you're saying, suggesting that many of these drugs might have both MDMA and have PMA or some combination.
Right.
Do we know where the toxicology labs, they check to be sure that there weren't other combos? I mean, do we know that it's just
Yes, if you send it into ecstasydata.org, or there's other laboratories where you can send samples of illicit substances of any substance anonymously.
do you know if in the body when somebody has died?
Oh, when someone has died, well, it depends on how fast something is metabolized, the half-life of it when it's in your system, how fast something metabolizes in your body, and how long you were alive, between the time that you took it and the time that you died, because your body doesn't stop metabolizing it until you're dead or maybe 10 minutes later. But yes, in many instances, they can tell, from blood tests what's in it. But more importantly, in the laboratories like ecstasydata.org, they can tell you exactly what's in it. They can break it down to, milligrams of, there's 60 milligrams of methadone and 45 milligrams of MDMA. So that's, the best way to know what's in your baggie. And even if you know all this and you know how to take care of yourself and you know how to stay out of, with the risk of hyperthermia, your body's, that your body can't regulate its temperature as well as it normally can, because MDMA and methadone and a lot of other drugs, PMA, all affects your body's thermoregulation. So your body can't cool down on its own. One of the most important things we recommend to rave and festival goers is to take breaks from the dance floor, to stay out of the midday sun at festivals, especially if you're taking MDMA. MDMA, I forget his exact position, but a gentleman that was in charge of government drug program or government drug regulation in England a few years back made a statement that MDMA was as safe as riding a bicycle or playing soccer, one or the other, or maybe he used both comparisons. It's about at the same risk as playing soccer or riding a bicycle, because about as many people die, the same ratio of people die from doing one as they do from the other. And he lost his job for it. He got fired because his job was to say drugs are bad. And and that's the problem with fact-based drug education. We don't have enough fact-based drug education. Our parents aren't telling us the truth about drugs. They're saying drugs are bad, don't ever take drugs, they'll kill you. And you'll turn into a dirty degenerate. And the government will do the same thing. Our government lies to us about everything. Why wouldn't they lie to us about drugs? The real reason is drugs are illegal, thanks to Henry Anslinger. You'd be really surprised why most drugs are illegal, mostly because of racism, and not because the government cares about your health and your well-being and wants you to be safe and healthy. They could give a shit, about you and your health. But so another important thing is when you finish your agent testing, these are very powerful corrosive substances. And there's a great trick to neutralizing them. You wouldn't want to just take this and, wipe it off and stick it in the garbage, or run it down the sink where it gets into, public places, or just dump it out on the ground. God forbid someone steps barefoot, you can have a little hole burn. So baking soda neutralizes the acidity. And this is really cool if you guys want to watch this. If you add a little baking soda to the reagent, it kind of puffs up in another chemical reagent. Okay, you can watch this one. Okay, you can watch this one right here. And you see it puffs up and bubbles and kind of like a little volcano reaction. You see that? So you just keep adding it until, I think I've got these covered here. So you just keep adding it until it's completely covered, and it stops bubbling. And now you've neutralized the chemicals and turned it into safe substance that's safe to be disposed of in the trash or down the sink. We're not adding corrosive things that'll ruin the pipes or ruin, your fingers or other creatures. So I should probably put this away because now we know exactly what it is. Okay, so we've covered. Maybe I covered my sister. Take this and watch the plate. My sister Katie, everyone. Thank you, Katie. So the next thing I have, and I want to talk to you about, and actually Gant, our first presenter who did the naloxone training course. You guys know we've talked about opiates and we talked about fentanyl a little bit in our naloxone, and Ethan touched on a little bit about fentanyl in his presentation as well, about measurements of fentanyl. Fentanyl is active in the most incredibly small doses, and it's sadly being mixed into street heroin. And the problem with that is that fentanyl is 1,000 times stronger than morphine, and that's really, really scary. And then the analogs of fentanyl, carfentanil, is 100 times stronger than fentanyl. So when you have, I don't know, that much, hey, wait, you can't see that really, can you? It's there, I promise you. About that much carfentanil is enough to kill you. It's enough to kill a person. And people are adding it to their cut, stepped on, stomped on bags of heroin so they can spread it out over a long way and keep making money and keep getting people high, and you can make an incredible amount of money as a drug dealer by cutting your heroin with fentanyl or even carfentanil. The problem is it's almost guaranteed. I can almost guarantee it that fentanyl isn't mixed thoroughly and evenly throughout a bag of heroin. So if I have a little bag of heroin, that maybe only fills this capsule. If I have that much heroin and it has, this much fentanyl in it or carfentanil in it, it's most likely it's not mixed evenly. So one side of my baggie could have no carfentanil in it, and the other side of the baggie can have a deadly amount of carfentanil in it. Yes?
It seems odd to me. I'm sure there must be, I don't know what it would be, but there must be something better for them to mix it with that wouldn't have that problem, because killing your clientele isn't good business, right? So why do they mix it with something that it doesn't mix evenly?
Well, the thing that kills their business more than killing their customers is their shipment being discovered is their substances being discovered in shipment. So if I want to get 1,000 people high, I'm going to have a half a kilo of heroin to distribute.
Here, but I don't know what it is. It's not in the world, but
right.
I would think there's probably something that they could mix it with that it would, mix more evenly or something. I'm just wondering.
One would think. There's a lot of things that perplex me about adulterating heroin with fentanyl and carfentanil. It's really disturbing. But the fact is, you can get, if I had this capsule filled with fentanyl, I could spread this throughout, or carfentanil. I could spread that throughout the 1,000 doses of heroin, and I could turn that into 5,000 doses of heroin. And I can get that smuggled in from China a lot easier than I can get a half a kilo of heroin smuggled in from China.
So is it, I think Camp was saying that's not such a problem here in the Bay Area, but in other parts of the country.
That's correct, and the main reason for that is, and this is interesting, on the East Coast, we have powdered heroin, and they're called China White, and it's mostly distributed and sold in powdered form, so you can mix another powder into it quite easily. The heroin that we get on the West Coast is called black tar, so it's in a black tar, goopy, sticky kind of moldy, moldable, malleable type wad of substance, and that you can't, it's harder to mix things into it.
How do you inject, if people want to inject it, how do they use it?
The tar, you break off a little bit, you weigh how much you want with a milligram scale like Ethan's demonstrated. And then you cook it in a spoon or a little cooker that they give you they distribute at the needle exchanges. You can get cookers and clean water because you want to use clean, purified.
And is the China white is pure heroin? Is it Asian? Is that what it's called, China white?
Well, it used to come exclusively from China, so they call it China white. I wouldn't say it's pure heroin. We can't say that anything for certain is pure. So in response to this great concern about fentanyl and profentanil being present in our heroines and killing people at an alarming rate, more people of the ages 50 and under are dying of drug overdose, than car accidents or from smoking cigarettes today, or from some of the more aggressive forms of cancer. So some really amazing people in recent months, over the last 6 months, have been working with laboratories and universities here in Berkeley to create a fentanyl test strip. And Mr. Galloway is directly responsible for the study that now resulted in the packaging of this. Emmanuel Surios, the person I'm sitting in for, and Gantt Galloway were instrumental people in having these strips provided, and now they're available. They were just released this past week on DenseSafe's website, so you can now buy these test strips. The thing is, there's a lot of complexities to using this. If you have a baggie of powdered heroin, you don't know, as I already explained, you could have some of your you could have the part of it that's deadly on one corner of the bag and the other part on the other corner of the bag. So, usually they say to take no chances is to just take a very small sample first from your baggie, and probably before fentanyl came about and became an adulterant in today's drugs. That was a pretty reliable way of sampling drugs and testing them, to take a very small sample first, wait an hour, see how the effects are, see how you feel, and then you can take it from there. That okay, that's good. I feel just a little bit, and okay, so now I know it's pretty clean, and I can proceed to take larger typical dosages of what I normally take. The thing is, if you take that small sample from one side of the baggie and then you load your syringe, or you take a big, insufflation, insufflate a large bump of heroin, that you could now have a scoop or a needle filled with, just enough fentanyl or carfentanil to kill you after you already sampled it and determined that, the bag is safe. So the best way to test your drugs that you were testing for fentanyl, and these are just really cool little test strips that you dip into your solution. But the thing is, your drugs have to be mixed into a solution in water. So if you want heroin and you want to sniff it, you need to take the entire bag of heroin and make it into a solution of water. And then with that solution of water, you'll only put just enough water to dissolve all of it into that solution, and then take a very tiny sample and put it in a separate container with a spoon, and then dilute that further and stir it really well so you have a good dilution, and then you take your test strip and you put the tip of it in, and it will wick up into the strip. And depending on if you have one strip, one red line or two red lines, kind of pregnancy test, that it'll give an indication of what's there. The problem with that with many users is that someone who's addicted to heroin and needs to get well, and have their fix, you just made all of your drugs wet, and it's wet, and now you're going to have to wait for your drugs to dry. And a lot of people don't want to go through that. So, while these are great tools, there's still, complexities with it and in using it that may prove, as a deterrent for people who are addicted to actually want to go ahead and use them. So I think if we can, try our best to encourage people who use that to really stop and think and to, to maybe go through a little bit longer Jones to get, what they're looking for. There's another option is to cook the drugs in your cooker. Cook your heroin and draw it into your syringe, the amount that you want to take, and then set that aside before you use it, and then add water back to your cooker and into a separate spoon, and then use it again. Now you're not getting a sample of everything that was in the cooker, so there's still an off chance that there could be fentanyl or carfentanil. There's about 5 or 6 different analogs of fentanyl that can be detected by these. But there's a chance that what's in the residue left in that cooker, doesn't contain enough or any of the fentanyl or carfentanil, and what's in your syringe that you've just loaded could possibly have that as well. So there's concerns, but it's still just another tool for harm reduction. And if anybody is an opiate user, or has friends or family that is an opiate user, you can get these. I have a number for sale that you can buy today. They're $2 a piece, which is a worthy investment for your life.
Do they come with instructions?
I have some instructions here. I have instructions here, and you can take a picture of it, or I can. I thought when I picked these up, they gave me more, but this is a pretty, inclusive. Emmanuel wrote all of this. The most important thing to know about fentanyl.
Is it on the website too?
It is on the DanceSafe website, so you can find the instructions for it there. It talks about 2 different ways of testing heroin and other injected drugs. If you inject heroin or other drugs, you need to test every time you inject. The easiest method is to test the residue from your spoon or cooker. So you can do it that way. If you're testing cocaine and other non-injected drugs, the best method, including powders, crystal, and tablets, is to test every bit of the drug you intend to consume. Unfortunately, this requires dissolving everything first in water. So again, if you want to use it by snorting it, if you snort heroin or if you snort cocaine, that you're going to have to get it wet and then wait for it to dry.
But you were saying that first method of testing with liquid pressure wouldn't necessarily cover everything. Like, if it's not mixing.
This is true. It's there's disclaimers for all of the use around any and all reagents, because we just can't be sure exactly, but it can lead us in a slightly less harmful direction, and that's the whole point of reagent testing and why we do it. So I've got 10 complete test kits. I've got test kits that can test DMT, that can test all the tryptamines. So today they're selling psilocybin in an extract, in a paste that's extracted from mushrooms, and so that can be tested. Acid can be tested, and to test those as an Ehrlich's reagent, I have a whole bunch of them, and I have the 4 tester kit that DanceSafe sells is a really great combination. It's the marquee reagent that we use today, the Mecca, the Mandolin, and the Simons that we use today. And each one is $20, or you can get the set of 4 complete kit for $65, which is a discounted price. Yes.
So you might have already said this before I got confused, but do the other tests that you have for things like LSD and these other tryptamines and things, do they have the same problems that the methadone and MDMA have, whereas it has, maybe has a little bit of LSD, but it's adulterated with something else, so it would just show up as LSD.
That's a really good question. LSD, there's some inherent problems with the LSD market these days. Who's heard of N bombs or 25I? Those are, well, they're still in the category of research chemicals. They're different analogs and different psychoactive substances that are psychedelic. 25I and BUME is a really, really strong psychedelic, and to some psychonauts, it's their favorite psychedelic, but it's very dose sensitive. And people are misrepresenting 25I and BUME as LSD at festivals and raves, just in their happenings and their dealings, and in higher doses, it's absolutely deadly. And at every festival, you're going to find a small handful of people that are like, "Oh, I'm going to take a 10 strip, dude," and they just trip balls for a couple of days straight. Well, if you take a 10 strip of M bombs, or even 4, doses that are the same as LSD, nobody's ever died from taking LSD. I think the report of the highest, dosage of LSD ever, reported in the world is 70 to 80,000 100 microgram doses. Yeah, and of course that person was never the same, and he never came back from his trip. But he didn't die. But you can die from a 10 strip of M bombs being misrepresented as LSD. And again, this all falls back to prohibition, because if we didn't have prohibition and we could easily make and create and distribute LSD and regulate it to keep it away from children, we wouldn't have clandestine laboratories trying to make alternative psychoactive substances to take the place of MDMA or LSD. So the Ehrlich's reagent will reveal that, hey, this is an Ehrlich's reagent, will reveal that, hey, this is not LSD. Also with the M bombs and with LSD in general, there's a good rule of thumb. If it's bitter, it's a spitter. Because LSD is flavorless, odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Yeah. So if you've got, if I ever had a tab, I just touch it to my tongue. If I didn't have a way of testing, just touch it to my tongue, and if there's some bitterness to it, if there's any kind of flavor to it, then get rid of it. It's not LSD, or it's adulterated with something else that isn't LSD.
Just nodding.
What's that?
Just nodding.
Okay, cool.
Well, since the analog bill, I can't recall exactly, when was it, 85, something like that. All substances, whether they're, molecularly similar to a Schedule 1 substance, or in effect are, in that category of being Schedule 1. So I don't know why someone would try to come up with something other than LSD unless it was difficult to manufacture LSD because precursors seem,
It all falls back to the precursors. If you can't get the ergot, or its compounds that they use to make LSD with, then you can't make LSD. But you can, the precursor chemicals to make 25-IMBOME or M bombs. Those are pretty readily available. You can order them from China, from other laboratories in the United States. There's no strict regulation where they have to track exactly who they sell it to and how much they bought. And so you can make all you want without law enforcement ever starting to get suspicious of your goings on. But if you try to order 100 gallons of Safrole, which is the sassafras oil that we used to use to make MDMA, then you're going to end up on a government watch list, and the DEA will be knocking on your door before long. I don't know if anybody's aware, but in recent years, there's been a big resurgence of MDMA in the world, in the country. It used to be a little bit of a shortage, and it was hard to find, and now it's everywhere. And that's because there's a new precursor that was developed, and it's 100% synthetic, so they don't need saffron anymore to make MDMA. So we have this new substance called PMK, which is a precursor to MDMA, and that's why we have so much of it now. It's easy. It's pretty easy to make, and it's only 1 or 2 steps away from MDMA. So
you use pure MDMA resulting from this new precursor.
yes, from PMK, you're getting, really good pharmaceutical grade MDMA, coming from this PMK. So people are, that's why we have so much right now, because the PMK isn't that difficult to get, and there's so much in abundance because we're not relying on, rainforests in Cambodia and Laos being mowed down by rogue, pirates out in the forest trying to collect and boil down
So then people are able to get PMK here.
PMK.
Sorry.
Yeah, people are able to get PMK, and then
so it can actually be made here rather than
a lot of it's being made in Canada these days and being shipped
down.
down.
Always puzzled me is it's in China, you can get everything. So why wouldn't they just make, since it's illegal to export here anyway, why not just make really good pure LSD or really good pure MDMA and ship that, since the other stuff is illegal too?
Well, so a lot of precursors are not illegal, or is not as strictly scheduled. So the penalties for getting caught with PMK aren't the same as the penalties of getting caught with heroin or with LSD. Anybody else? Questions? Who likes drugs?
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. If you guys want test kits, I've got lots of test kits, because if you like drugs, then you want to test your shit. We want you to keep coming back.
This is great. We're so grateful to share.
Thank you.
This is the beginning of a long and painful association with WBC.
I agree. I agree. I hope so too. I'm really thankful for you guys. I guess for you guys trusting Emmanuel to throw me in his spot.
Oh, absolutely.
I knew you would. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for coming. We clearly didn't think that we would want to charge for a workshop. Just kind of information, we should be able to get this information. Really, it's kind of a philosophical perspective for us. But anytime you or somebody that you know is interested in this information, with which you might share it, wants to do something in support of this organization, we'd be grateful to have your help. And you can usually keep track of what we're doing on our website. The extremely facile young web content folks out there who keep it all very up to date. So yes, I'm trying to see what we're doing. And we'd like to see that the WWDC will see. Thank you. Have a moment to help us hold the chairs. I think the site is good.
Emmanuel asked me to just, send a shout out and apologize for him not being able to be here. But since he came out. Something's more important. That's right. This is added more reagents to the kit, so they have actually two different. One is a 7 reagent type.